Hello and welcome back to the Building a Blog series. This is part 14, I think. So this is building a thumbs up, thumbs down voting system within our existing application. So you can use this code within your application. You don't need to. If you want to download the code that I'm using, please do in the description. So the topics here really, we're going to create some new models. This is really the workflow. So we're going to create some new models for this in our databases. Then we need to add some AJAX, so we're going to use the AJAX request to send data to the server. Then build the logic for actually changing the buttons and counting how many votes the users have made. And then we go back to the front end and build any logic that's required and do any front end styling. So here is the thumbs up system that we're going to create. So we have thumbs up and thumbs down, similar to the YouTube thumbs up and thumbs down. This user's already made a selection or a vote, so the vote is in blue. They can remove their vote and place it back, or they can change their vote. So obviously behind the scenes, this is all being saved in a database, all these statistics. If we were to log out the user, go back to the post, the user, when they try to make a vote, they'll be just sent to the create an account page. Maybe you want to send them to the login page rather than the create the account page. So they can't actually vote until you're logged in. So if you want to follow this tutorial from the base code that I start off with, you can head over to the GitHub repository and download part 13. There is a link in the description. So in the previous tutorial, the Building a Blog tutorial, we were just going over some of the more advanced features of building a search functionality or search feature. So we do have this hooked up to a Postgres database. If you don't have that installed or don't use Postgres databases, if you just go into the core, which is the main application for this application, go to the settings, you just need to remove the Postgres configuration right here, and then just go back to the default configuration, and there is the database already created, so that should just work. And then finally, if you are using the Building a Blog series part 13 code, once you start this server, you'll be presented with this screen on the home page, and at the moment in this system there's only one entry, which is this one here, so we're going to work from here. So first of all, we're going to build the unit on the actual page, so the thumbs up and thumbs down. So let's put that in place first. So I've headed over to Bootstrap icons and I've searched for thumbs, and I'm using the thumbs up and thumbs down. So if you're not familiar with the project, you'll need to go over to the templates folder. Inside of here we have the blog, so this is one of the apps, the blog app. So inside of here we have single. So this is where we're going to need to work in this project and place those thumbs. So we want to add the unit right here. So inside of the code, we have the if request user authenticated, and then we have the like counter right there. So let's not worry about if the user authenticated to begin with. Let's just build the unit. So this unit really is just a copy of the like count unit. We have the div outer elements, and then we're going to create these buttons as links. So we go ahead and use the A tag, and then we go ahead and now add our styling. So here we're using Bootstrap again, so you can see that we're creating a button, and then because it is a link, we're going to add text dark. We've got padding of 0 around and border of 0, and then we're going to use the button outline light. Okay, so in actual fact, we probably don't need the button outline light. We'll just move ahead, and then we're going to create the link, or prepare the link, and then we give it a value. So this is going to be thumbs up. Obviously the other icon is going to be thumbs down value. And then if you want to add like a data toggle, so that when you hover the mouse over, similar to what YouTube has, a toggle appears, a data toggle appears. So this is going to be I like this. And the role is going to be a button, so we're going to make this into a button. And then we go ahead and just copy and paste the SVG from the Bootstrap website, so you can add your image right here. So I've gone ahead and added an ID for this because I want to be able to control the styling. And then I've added the width and height at 1.5. So now I can do the same thing, just copy and paste that, but just add a different SVG here, or a different image we want to use for the thumbs up and thumbs down. Obviously you need to read the code here, so we don't want to have value thumbs up, so we want thumbs down as the value, and then here the ID needs to be thumbs down. So that's the 2 points there. I think we're ready, so just save that, go back in, and you can now see we have our thumbs up and thumbs down ready. So we're going to need some data, or we're going to use numbers next to the thumbs images. So here I've just added a span. I've just made sure I've added some IDs. So in the like, I've got a like this and up. So that's 0 at the moment. So I've just placed 0 in there. That's obviously going to be a dynamic piece of code that's going to change when the user clicks on it. Actually, I think I don't need I like this. Let's just add the span just up, and then we'll do the same thing for the down. And this is what's going to happen. We're going to utilize the data from the post, but at the moment we're just going to put in a 0. So let's have a look at that. There we go. So now we need to think about some logic here. So we'll try and move through this logic step by step, stage by stage, because it can get a bit tricky in trying to convey this message and flow. I'm not going to be showing you any diagrams, etc. So it can be tricky to follow. But let's just try and work out what's going on here. The user's going to click this button. We need to increment this number here. So we're going to need to store this number in the post, or associate this number to this post. And we're going to need to also capture whether the user has actually pressed a button. So we're going to need to capture that too. And then what we want to also capture is what button the user has already pressed. So essentially there's 3 things that we want to capture there. So let's head back into the blog app and let's go to the models. So we want to now add some more fields inside the post model so that we can capture and record this information. Inside the blogs model, I've added 3 new fields inside the post table. So here we have the thumbs up, thumbs down. So we're just going to store the number, the amount of thumbs up and the amount of thumbs down. And then in addition to that, we're going to create this many-to-many field to the user so that we're going to capture the user against the fact that they have actually pressed an thumbs up or thumbs down. So with that in place, as you might imagine, you're going to now need to make your migrations and then just migrate. So there's very much 2 parts here, because we want to store not only how many thumbs up and thumbs down the individual post has. That's why we're putting the fields here inside the post table, but we also want to record what the user has done, or what the current user status is. Have they pressed up or down? So user 5 might have already pressed up. So we need to record somewhere that the user has already pressed a button, and thumbs up say, and that's their current selection. So we're going to need to make a new table here. So let's go back to the end of the blogs model, and we're going to add a new table to capture and store the users who have pressed a thumbs up or thumbs down and their current selection. So I'm going to call this table vote, and I'm going to add a foreign key to the post so that we can capture what post we're referring to. And then we need to create a foreign key to the user so we can capture what user has selected up or down. Oh, sorry, what user has selected thumbs up or thumbs down. And then we need to then save their current vote. So I've just called that vote. It's a Boolean field. You could use numbers potentially. So here I'm going to represent whether someone has pressed up or thumbs up by true. And if someone's pressed thumbs down, I'm going to represent that and save that as a Boolean false. So just go ahead and migrate that. So make migrations and migrate. And then we have the model that's going to store the current user's votes. At this point, you might be asking, why are we storing the user's votes here? And in addition to that, we're also storing whether the user has made a vote right here as well. So there's many ways that you could do this. You didn't necessarily need this many-to-many field here. In this example, I'm just going to show you this way. So now let's build the logic for this. So I'm actually going to do this in the accounts application. I think I did have a valid reason why I wanted to use the accounts application for this functionality. Of course, you could place this in the blog if you wanted to. So I'm going to put this in the accounts views here. So let's start building this up. So I'm going to call this view just thumbs. The first step in this logic is we want to deal with the new selection. So the user has logged in and they make a new selection. So let's deal with that first. In this implementation, we're going to be utilizing AJAX to send synchronous messages across to the server so that we don't have to refresh the page every time someone clicks on the thumb. So let's first of all just deal with some of the AJAX so we can send a message to this actual view here to deal with some of the logic that's required to get the feature working. So let's head back to the single page. We're going to need to add some AJAX at the bottom here. So we already have some here. We're just going to add this to the bottom. So here's a template, our AJAX template for using AJAX with jQuery. So this isn't JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. This is an implementation using jQuery. Just make sure that in your HTML that you're using the min version. I think that if you are using Bootstrap and you copy across the default template or the base template, it's using a different version of jQuery which doesn't include the AJAX facilities. So just make sure that you're using the min version at least for the jQuery, and it's at the top and it's run before you actually run the AJAX or this AJAX code. Okay, so you can see here we've created a thumb or an action, a on-click action, and we want to run this piece of code here, this block of code, when the user clicks on, in this case we're using this thumb action class. So back in your thumbs, back in your thumbs up and thumbs down, let's just go ahead and make sure that this link here has the class of thumbs action. So now they both have the class of thumbs action. So when we click on any of these, it's now going to run that piece of code. So we've hooked that up. That's the first step. So an important factor here is that when we press the button, we want to send a message to the server. So we need to tell the server we need to tell Django what post the user has clicked on to perform an action on that specific post. So let's head to the code, back up to the code again, and we just need to include that when we send off a message to the server that someone's clicked on an icon, and we need to then also tell Django what post the user is currently viewing. So again, there's a few ways of doing this. I'm just going to do it this way. So we've got this span here. It's going to be ID thumbs, and then I'm going to include a data value. And what I've done here is I've grabbed the post ID and I'm using that ID as data values, and I'm going to pass that data across to the server and then use that in our logic to actually update the database and so on. So if you're new to Django, so what's happening on this single page is obviously we're showing a single post item. So on here, there's data that's been handed over to this template. Inside of the post data, we're just gathering the ID of this post. So that's how we're getting this information here. So if you're not too sure, then just head back to some previous tutorials and maybe start from a different tutorial and build up to this tutorial. Okay, so now we can capture that piece of information, that piece of data, and we're going to send that across, but we're also going to send across the values of the button that's pressed. So we're going to need to know what button is pressed. So here I've added the value of thumbs up, and this button here has thumbs down. So that's two important bits of values here that we're going to capture and send across. And that way we know whether someone has clicked on thumbs up or thumbs down. And we're going to perform actions based upon whether someone has clicked up or the down button. So with that in place, we can now start thinking about actually fully padding out this piece of code here. So remember, if you're not familiar with AJAX, this is a piece of code that's going to work in the background, send a request to the server without the user having to refresh the page, and then we can send a message back and update the page. So let's prepare sending some data. First of all, we're going to capture the data value. So we're going to look for the element by ID, thumbs, so the span was thumbs, and then we're going to get the attribute, which was data value. Apologies, I'm just going to scroll up just to make that explicitly clear to you. So where were we? Here. So the ID was thumbs, and then we're looking for the data value. That's going to have the post ID. Okay, so we've got that information in place now. So we'll capture that and put it into this variable here. And then we'll go ahead and we'll actually capture the button data now. So remember we had thumbs up and thumbs down. So we're going to capture those values. So we do that right here. So button equals this attribute value. So we're just going to get the value of the button, which is going to be thumbs up or thumbs down. So now we want to post some data across to the server to perform the logic needed. So we define how we want to send the data. So in this case, we're going to send it via post. And then we want to tell AJAX where we're going to send the information. So we need to set out the URL. So I'm going to make a new URL in a second in accounts called thumbs, which is going to be connected to our new view. So next up, we need to think about the data that we're going to send across. So obviously I want to send the post ID. So I make some data for that. So this is going to store the post ID, the current post, the current blog entry that the user is looking at. And then we're going to need to send the CSRF token across for a little bit of security. So we just set that up. So it won't work unless you've included that. And then I just set out an action. So this is just kind of an arbitrary type of piece of data. So I can do an additional check just to make sure that data is coming from this AJAX request. And then last of all, I need to know what user or what button the user has pressed. So remember, we've captured that information right here. So I'm going to send that across to button. So this is going to say, this bit of data is going to say thumbs up or thumbs down. So classic, because I was too busy telling you what I was doing, I put this information obviously in the wrong place. So it obviously needs to go into the data right here. Apologies. Okay, so that was just me concentrating on what I was doing. So that needs to go into the data. That's the data that we're going to send across. So let's now create our URL for this so that we can send it to our view and have the logic compute and update the database, etc. So inside of our accounts, we've got the URLs. So it's looking a little bit busy at the moment. So let's just add the new URL for this. It's a simple one. So we're just going to have a path of thumbs, and then we're going to use the views thumbs, and we're just going to give that a name of thumbs right there. Right, so back in the views, you can see now we have the associated thumbs view right here. So now we can start building this up. So first of all, let's just check to make sure that we are receiving a post request and that in the data there's an action called thumbs. So let's just go back into the single page here. So notice here, the action equals thumbs. So that's the data being stored right there. So if we do send a post request and we have an action called thumbs, then we're going to perform the action down here. So first of all, we need to extract from the request some of the data. So first of all, let's just get the information stored in the post ID. And then we're also going to get the information that's stored in the button. So remember that we've stored the post ID in the post ID and the button, which is going to be thumbs up or thumbs down text inside of this button. So that's what's stored there, and we're just extracting it out and we're putting it into these new variables called ID and button. Right, so now we have this information. We now need to actually collect some information from our database. So we're only going to work on the post that's associated to the page that the viewer is looking at and has actually pressed the button thumbs up or thumbs down on. So we just need to collect that post first. So we do that by creating this new variable called update, and I'm going to store the individual single post inside of that. So I'm going to use a get to do that. That's going to return one item. And I'm just saying here, go into the post database or the post table and look for an object where ID equals ID. So remember that the ID is coming from the post, from the AJAX post. So that's what we captured and sent across. So that's how we're going to get the individual post data. Okay, right, so now we can start this logic. So there's a few things that we need to do here. So let's first start off with a new selection. So let's assume that the user has gone to the post page and they're looking at the post and they like it and they press thumbs up or thumbs down. So let's first of all just deal with that kind of situation. So what we need to do is just check the button. Remember, the button is going to have inside of this variable thumbs up or thumbs down. So let's just check to see if the button equals thumbs up. So if the button equals thumbs up, then we need to add or increment the thumbs up number inside of the database. And then we also then need to add the user to the database so that we can record the fact that they have actually made a selection, and then we need to save it. And then in addition to that, we need to then add this new vote, because we've updated the numbers now in the post table. Now we need to go to the votes table and then update that too to make a new entry. So let's first of all add or update the numbers inside of the table. So in the post table. So let's just have that open so we can see what's going on. So here, remember, we've got thumbs up and thumbs down. We're just recording how many thumbs up and thumbs down we have. So the first thing we're going to do is, if the user clicks on thumbs up, we need to increment this by 1. So let's do that. So here I'm using the F expressions. So there is a different tutorial on F expressions if you're wondering what that is. So if you want to use this, obviously we're going to need to import this in. So let's just go ahead and import F expressions in. So that's just going to make it, essentially we're just utilizing F here expressions to reduce the amount of queries that are running. And this basically is going to run directly on the database and without having to take out data from the database, store it into memory, and then return it, etc. This is just going to be performed on the database without having to actually add additional queries. So we do that. So let's use that to +1. And then once we've done that, the next step is then to add the user to the thumbs. So remember that the user was identified or was being inserted into the thumbs field here. So we do that. So we've collected the user information and we've added them to that. And then we go ahead and just save that. So that will then get processed and saved in the database. So now we need to actually add a new vote. So let's go ahead and add a new vote. So we need to add a new entry in our votes table. So we can do that by saying new equals vote. So let's just make sure that we've also imported into our model vote our new table. So we're going to add some new data. So remember there's 3 bits of data that we need to add: the post ID, the user ID, and also the vote. Now remember, if the thumbs up is being selected, we're going to select true or define the vote as true. So we select that and make that change. Okay, so that seems to be absolutely fine. Okay, so if, for example, the button isn't thumbs up, maybe it's thumbs down, we're then obviously going to do the opposite here for thumbs down. So here we can have another if statement. So if button equals thumbs down, I'm just going to use an else statement here. I'll just copy this in. You can see this. So basically, if it's not thumbs up, well, it must be thumbs down. So we again just do exactly the same thing, but obviously on the thumbs down this time. So update thumbs down +1, and then we add the user, because remember this is the new selection. So we add the user to the table, we update it, and then we add a new entry, but this time the vote equals false because they pressed on vote down. So this is associated to only a new selection. So the user has not made any selections yet. So now we have that in place, we want to obviously now return some items from the database. Oh, sorry, we want to return back, to our single page, apologies. So let's return some data here. So we're going to, because we're using F expressions here, we're just going to use update refresh to collect the information. And then we're going to store the up and down. So we're going to store up and down. So those are the current votes for the thumbs up and thumbs down. So remember, I'm collecting this from update, so we're still using the update. Remember, we started off by using update to collect the individual single post at the top here. So with that in place, we now have some data to actually return to our page. So we'll just use the JSON response to return that back. So we're going to return up, the current value of up, the amount of up votes, and the amount of down votes. Okay, so let's go back into our single page, and now we have this success here. So now we're returning some information from the database. So let's go ahead and add some information here so we can update the page. So we return the JSON request, and inside of here I've added a new variable. You can call this whatever you like. So the data that's returned from Django is going to be stored here in JSON. So that's the up and down data. So all I need to do here is now update the data on the page. So this is going to store the JSON up. That's going to store all the current up, the amount of ups that have been selected for this post. And then obviously the down is going to be down. So what I'm going to do here is just inject the current values of up and down, the amount of ups and down votes the post has had, into our page. And notice here I'm using getElementById up and down. So if we move back up, we need to make that ID. And if you remember, at the moment, we're putting that data right here. So we've just got this 0. So notice that ID equals up and ID equals down. So this is going to be replaced by the information that's returned from the database. So let's just see this in action. So this isn't going to work unless the user is logged in, because remember, we're trying to capture the user and put them in the database. So what we're going to need to do is just create a new account. So I'm just going to make a new super user. It's the quickest way of doing this. So I'm just making a new account. So every time I make a new account, I'll just create a new super user. And so then I can go ahead and log in. Okay, and go back to my post, and I should be able to press this, and there we go. So we now have that function working. And of course, I can keep pressing it because we're not capturing anything else. So everything is working absolutely fine at the moment. Right, so now we have this capability of actually incrementing the data in the database and storing the fact that the user has made a request. So when they have made a vote, they will be stored in the post table. And then we also have the ability to then store that data in the votes table. So in the votes table, there's a reference to the post ID, the user ID, and the fact that they voted and what type of vote they've made. So whether it be true or false. So let's just go ahead in the blog and the admin. Let's just add the votes table to the admin. So I'll just go ahead and create a new entry. There we go. So now we have the votes table. Let's go back in to our admin. And you can now see we've got the votes table, and you can see we've made lots of votes. And this is pretty much all we have: the post, the user, and the vote. So if it's ticked, it's going to be a positive vote. If it's a Boolean true, if it's false, obviously it's not going to be selected. So we've got that in place. So we're recording those. If we go into the posts, you can see that the numbers are being incremented here to represent whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down. So I'll just remove that and save that back to nothing. And then we go ahead and the votes, just remove those votes. So you can go ahead and do that if you want to. Okay, so that's how to manage that. So let's go back into our page. You can see that updates the page here. So now we need to test before we make a new selection, before we make a new entry, we need to test to see if the user has an entry already in the database. So have they already made a vote? So here we're using Q to create an AND statement here, or AND expression, or AND query. So we're going to go into the vote table and get some information. So we're using get, so we're going to return an individual item, and we're looking for where the post ID equals ID, so the current post ID, and the user ID equals the user ID. So if there is a match, so if the user has made a vote, they will have this entry. So we will make a match, and we're just going to return that data into eVote. So I use eVote, so existing vote. So if they do have an existing vote, it's going to return one piece of information that's going to be stored right there. So notice that I'm only interested in the actual vote. So I go inside of the query that's returned and I just extract out the vote. Now remember, that vote is going to be a true or false Boolean. I did say at the start of the tutorial that I've decided to include the user also inside of the post model. So in actual fact, the first thing we're going to do is check that model. So I'm going to say if there is a user inside that model. So if there is a user, it means that they've made a vote. I'm going to first of all check that. That's my first check. So first of all, I check to make sure that I've received a request from AJAX from the page. And now I'm going to check to make sure that the user exists inside of the thumbs field, inside of the post model. So remember, back in the model here, in the post model, this is the post model, we captured the thumbs up numbers, thumbs down amount of numbers, and also the user gets placed here too. So if the user has made a vote, they will appear here. So we're first of all going to check that, and then we're going to capture their current vote. So really this is just used to check to see if the user has made a vote. This is checked to see what the current vote is. That's the flow. So now we have their vote. Their vote, like I said, is going to be true or false. So now we can test against that. So we're going to say if their vote is true, then we're going to do something. So there's two actions here that can take place. So if they have made a vote, that's fine. But we now need to know what button they pressed and also the fact that they have made a vote. So if they have made a vote and the vote is true, then currently they have made a positive vote. So if they press the positive vote again, we need to remove that positive vote. So if you press the thumbs up and then decide you don't want thumbs up anymore and you press that again, so that means in the database your eVote is true. So if you press thumbs up again, we need to remove that from the system. So similar, if you have selected thumbs up and then you press thumbs down, we need to remove the thumbs up and then add to the thumbs down. So there's two actions here that we need to deal with, thumbs up and thumbs down, whether someone has made a selection or not. So first of all, we say thumbs up. So remember, this is true, so they have already made a thumbs up. So if they do press thumbs up again, we need to remove all the data from the system and go back to the neutral state, or the state before they press the button. And of course, if they go back to that state, remove everything, then obviously this new selection will then take place the next time they press the button. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense. Apologies, I haven't made any diagrams, etc. It's normally easier, isn't it, to see in diagram form. So if they have already made a vote and they press thumbs up again, we need to do something. So first of all, we need to update the thumbs up numbers. So we need to take one away from thumbs up because they've deselected that option and they've taken away their vote. So we remove that and then we update the thumbs because we want to remove the user from thumbs because they've no longer made a selection. So we remove them from their table and then we save it. So that's the first step. Now, remember what we also need to do. We also need to remove the user from the vote. We need to remove their vote from the table as well. So we do an update refresh to collect some information that we utilize. And then we say up equals update thumbs up and the down equals currently the update thumbs down. So we're just collecting the new amount of thumbs up and thumbs down. Obviously all that's happened is that we've just taken one away from thumbs up, but we go ahead and do that. And then we just delete the user, or sorry, we delete from queue. Now what is queue? Now remember, queue equals the current entry inside of our vote table. That's it, just up here. So what we're doing is we're just taking that entry. It's already live here. So all we need to do is delete it. So we just delete that entry from the table. So now what we have is a situation where we've just removed everything that the user has done previously in terms of clicking up or clicking down. So all we need to do now is just return the response up and down. So if you wanted to, there's some additional here, and remove none. I think I was just trying something out there. So at the moment that doesn't, we'll keep that in. So I may have a reason why I've put that in there. So you can see though, ultimately we're just passing back up and down. Okay, so that's in place. So now we need to do a similar functionality for the if they pressed thumbs down. So thumbs down then. So if the current vote is true and they press thumbs down, then obviously what we need to do is remove from thumbs up -1, and we need to then add one to the thumbs down. So let's go ahead and do that. So if they press thumbs down, then we need to change the post. So first of all, we remove 1 from thumbs up, and then we add 1 to the thumbs down because that's their new vote. And then of course what we want to do then is just save that. So that saves all the values and the current score for the votes up and votes down. And then what we need to do is change the queue vote to false. Remember, we're getting the information from queue. We're just updating this piece of information and saving it. That's all we're doing. So we're extracting out from this query, which returns the user's current selection from the votes table. We're just selecting the vote field and we're just updating it to false. That's all we're doing there. And then we say queue save, update fields vote. So we update that specific field, vote. And then we go ahead and update refresh. So we collect or get the current information from the database, and then we select and put into the variables up and down the current up and down votes, the thumbs up and thumb down votes, and then we just return it back to our page. Okay, so that's going to happen if the user's vote currently stands at true. So if they've added a thumbs up. So if they have made a vote and it is thumbs up, then this is going to happen, what we've just done there. So now we need to do the thumbs down. So if eVote equals false, so if their current vote is thumbs down, we now need to do something. So if eVote equals false, so if their current vote is thumbs down, let's just perform some actions. So first of all, if the vote is down, then if the button they then press is thumbs up, then obviously what we need to do is add 1 to the thumbs up and -1 to the thumbs down, because now their selection has changed to thumbs up from thumbs down. So we then save that, and then of course we then need to update their vote to true, because they did previously select false, the thumbs down, and now they've selected thumbs up. So we change their Q vote to true, and then we update that, and then we return the update votes from the database, the up and downs, and then obviously return that to the page. Now, if they've selected the thumbs down previously and then pressed thumbs down again, then obviously what we need to do is take away 1 from the thumbs down, remove that, then remove them from the database, the post database, and then we need to remove them. So we press save, and then we update the database and collect the information, the new information about the up and down votes. Obviously all that's happened is the down vote has gone down 1, and then delete them from the vote table. We need to do that too. So we're just cleaning everything up here again, and then we return that data again. Okay, so we now have that functionality in place. So let's just remember here. So if the user has already made a selection, remember it goes to this phase here. But obviously if they haven't made a selection, then obviously we want to make a new selection. Remember the first piece of code we created, so where we just add the thumbs up or thumbs down and add them to the databases. So let's just create an else statement here. So if and then else. So put the else right here. So this else is just connected to the if. So if they don't already exist, if they haven't made an existing vote, then they will go to the else and then create their new vote, up or down, thumbs up or thumbs down. So because I didn't mention it, you'll notice that I'm using pass here. So you may want to add some additional functionality to the system. I'm just using pass just to move things on. So this is just a functional piece of code that you can utilize. Of course, you can definitely refactor this. There's a lot of code here that's being done more than once. So ideally, you'd want to refactor some of this. So I just wanted to show you a functional and hopefully understandable piece of code that I could explain easily to you. So that's all the logic to the system then. So we now have all the logic that we need to get this working. So now we're just going to focus on the front end here. So let's go down to the bottom and think about some of the different parameters that we're going to need to get this working. So we left off, we're down at the bottom of our single page in the blog templates. So we left off just adding the success result for the like count. So let's go ahead and also add one for the, oh no, I'm in the wrong place there, apologies. No, we already had that, sorry. So down here we had, we returned the data from the database and we updated the numbers next to the thumbs up and thumbs down, so the up and down. So let's just go ahead and add a new user in actual fact. Just test this out. So I'll just make a new user. And we'll just go ahead and log in. Okay, so now we have the post. So let's have a look. So thumbs up, thumbs down. There we go, that works okay. Thumbs up and thumbs down, that works okay. Now we need to check whether this is going to work. So thumbs up here. So if they have already a down vote and press up, that should be swapping over. So there we go. So we can see that all the functionality is in place. So now what we're going to need to do is just to finish this off, just add some styling. So if the user does press, then we know what the user has pressed. So let's first of all just create some simple CSS. Apologies for the scroll there. And up atop here, I'm just going to add the thumb active. So this is a new class I'm building, a thumb active fill equals blue. So this is just going to change the SVG image, the outline of the image to blue. So let's now add some style to this. So I've gone over to the top of the page in the style sheets. I've just added a new style here called fill blue. So this is going to change the line color of the SVG image that we're using to blue. So we want to activate this when the user clicks on the buttons, the thumbs up or thumbs down. So let's just remember that in this SVG, we have the ID of thumbs up or the ID of thumbs down. So we're going to utilize that to then add a new class in here. So what we're going to do when the user clicks on this SVG image, this link, it's going to add a new class here, and that class is going to represent thumbs active, and then it's going to change the outline of our SVG to blue, indicating that the user has clicked on it. So back in our AJAX here, you can see that I've added this new line or this new block here. So if the data has returned remove and it equals none, then we're going to remove the class from where I just showed you. So here what we've done is we've constructed the ID. So we're trying to find the ID in this content in this page. So button, remember what button is. Back up here, remember when someone clicks on the button, the value or the attribute appears here. So when you click on the SVG button, that's going to include the name of the ID, which is either thumbs up or thumbs down. So that's what we're capturing there. So this is going to say thumbs up or thumbs down, which is the ID like I've just shown you. So we're going to remove the class if the user has... Okay, so I've actually just thought of a different way. I don't know why I'm doing that and thinking about it. So when the user presses the button, we're going to add the class. Let's just see that in action first. There we go. So it's gone blue. But notice obviously they've both gone blue now. So we need to remove. So let's just go back into the code. So obviously before we change this, let's just remove it. So what we're going to do is just find all the SVGs which has the class of thumb active, and we're just going to remove. So first of all, we remove the styling, and then we just add the styling associated to the button that the user has just pressed on. I think that's a cleaner, simpler way of doing this. So let's go back and refresh. So you can now see whatever the user clicks on, it is now highlighted. Okay, so there we have it, building a block, thumbs up and thumbs down. So this was requested by users. Thank you very much. If you have any more requests, then just let me know and I'll try and build something for you. So yes, if we look at the code, there's definitely areas of refactoring here. We could definitely slim this down. So like I said in the tutorial, I tried to make some functional code for you so that you could implement. I am trying to angle this. This is meant to be built in a simple blog, so I am trying to angle this at beginners. We are kind of moving away from that almost potentially, the beginners that I have in mind for some of these tutorials. So let me know, please give me some feedback, please like and subscribe, send those signals to YouTube. Let's try and build a bigger environment for people to learn and enjoy coding.